Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 39, another 7 curious interesting things I saw last week. Let's crack on. This one, amazing. So this is Dino Bino, nothing to do with me obviously and my name. However, this is a Twitcher, let's say, playing Call of Duty, various versions of it, using a recorder. So what he's done here is he has mapped each one of the notes of the recorder to a different sort of left, right, up, down, fire. And if you actually click on the links, links in the description below, as they say, then you can listen to the bizarre sound of somebody playing Call of Duty using a recorder, and actually being really good at it as well. So there's a Twitch stream actually going on as I record this of it as well. Now, whilst I thought this was really interesting, the reason I thought it was interesting because I was also researching accessible gaming accessories, and there are other people out there who don't really have the luxury of using this for fun and have to do it for real. So No Hands Neto, for instance, is from Brazil and uses basically a device not dissimilar to this, but basically like a blowpipe essentially to play games. So a bit of fun, quite interesting, but also a serious point. This is NVIDIA's Get3D. Now, Get actually means something. It's basically there's words that it means, and they're very technical. However, what it means is it can actually it's trained an algorithm to use, or an AI or a generative algorithm to use 2D input to create 3D output. So so this is interesting. It's what you're seeing on the screen right here, and they've also put another part of their technology to it as well, which is called StyleGAN Nada, which will allow you to transfer one style to another. So you can take, for instance, the style of a Simpsons character or a leopard or a tree, and you can apply it to a different thing. So it's basically style transfer, as it's called. So that's quite interesting. Now, why is this super interesting? Is because this is generating objects for metaverses or virtual simulations, so that could be quite interesting. So if you have, for instance, computer vision input, you have a photo, you might be going around Google Street, for instance, then even the imagery from Google Street can then be used to turn those into 3D objects, in which case you can then pretty much turn a 2D street object into a 3D explorable world. So we could even see the likes of Google Street becoming explorable and 3D because of this technology. There you go. Who knows? We'll see what happens. TLDR, which is too long didn't read. If you don't know what it is, your email should probably have one of those in there. TLDR for coding is really interesting. So we've seen lots of things like Copilot from GitHub, which will allow coders to code more easily, as though they have somebody next to them who, quite frankly, knows what they're doing. So we've seen quite a lot of things where coders have a lot of help creating code, but if you already have code, then what on earth does it mean if you don't really know? Which is one of the problems with coding, is sometimes you receive a whole load of code, and sometimes, or a lot of the times, the reply is, do you know what, it's easier to rewrite it because we know what it will do. However, TLDR is really interesting because you install it. I don't think it's out just yet, but this is the animation of it working. There's a link down below to Beyond Code, or beyondcode.de, and you would install it into your code environment, and you will hover over something and it will tell you in real English what it actually does, which I think is marvellous. I wish I had this years and years ago. There you go. Thought that was interesting. TLDR for coders. Billionaires, I should say, are having a tough time right now, particularly in tech stock. So as you can see here in front of you, this graph is the Nasdaq Composite, which is sort of the average, I guess, versus things like Meta. So you can see there was a huge drop in profit, I think January, February, March, something like that. So that was when the earnings came out and said that it had not had a great year. And then it dropped even further. But there's a big run on big tech at the moment. So people like Zuckerberg, it might also be the investment put into Meta, the metaverse, for instance. However, he has lost on his personal net worth $71 billion, and he's only now worth a piffling $54 billion. Bezos has lost $46 billion, nearly $47 billion. He still has 100 and something or other, so that's okay. Musk is obviously diversified in lots of other things. It's not just big tech. It's obviously rockets and other things, and medicine and things. 268 billion he currently has. I think he only lost 2.8 billion, so that's okay. Point of this is big tech at the moment is actually taking a bit of a slump. If you have stocks and shares, then that's why they've gone down, but the whole world is right now as well, but tech is getting it super bad at the moment. There you go. The FCC, so this is the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC in America, and they regulate the airwaves and all that sort of stuff. They now have a plan. Essentially, they've got fed up waiting for everybody else to agree to this, so they've decided to go ahead on their own. What this is how do we start having a look at the space junk out there, and there is a huge amount of it. I think there was two satellites crashed into each other. An old Russian satellite crashed into something. Just those two satellites created another 2,000 pieces of space junk out there. So what the FCC have now said that currently if you have a satellite and it is doing any work or has been launched by America or has any dealings with America, then currently within 25 years of the end of its life it needs to be either pushed into a far orbit or it needs to be kind of lowered into an orbit where it burns into the atmosphere. They've now said that needs to be 5 years, so that's at least starting to tackle this stuff. It's only in America, but it's any company that has dealings with America as well, which will probably be most of them. There you go. So that is interesting. And also I knew King Charles III of the UK also mentioned this in one of his first speeches. So the environment or environmental causes clearly is all about space dust, and I think something like 90% of all of this stuff here is junk rather than active satellites. 95%. There you go. 3D printing with drones. It's got all the buzzwords. There's even some QR codes in there as well, which is ace. So these are researchers from Switzerland who have shown that you can now do 3D printing using drones, or more importantly, multiple drones. So they've also shown right on cue how you can train drones, or at least you can work out the paths for drones so they can all work together and build structures together. So really interesting anyway, just for construction, but also more interesting for things like inaccessible places, or also repairing really complicated things in accessible places. So things like the Houses of Parliament in the UK, full of noodly stuff that you can now very specifically go and do repairs to. It uses a sort of special sort of concrete or clay to do that, but you can use anything, as you saw it there, using building foam. So that's quite interesting. So if you hear these buzzing above you, then that's probably what they're doing in the future. And finally, this is definitely my game of the year. It used to be Stray Cats, but is now definitely Trombone Champ. If you've not seen this, it's been showing up on TikTok and social media and all over the place. So this is a game where it's available on Steam, by the way, only on PC at the moment, but a Mac version is coming soon. If you don't know what any of that is, it's basically a games platform that you can go and download and play games for. It installs them for you. But what you do is you play what's something like akin to Guitar Hero, but you move your mouse up and down and you click the mouse to play the notes. So as you slide your mouse forwards and backwards, it slides the notes of the trombone, and you try and match the ones on screen. It is absolutely hilarious. So this is trying to play the Star Spangled Banner, obviously the US national anthem, and it just makes it funny. So I don't know whether that's blasphemous or not, but this example is just hilarious, as are all the other ones that I've seen as well. So I just thought it was really interesting. Very simple game, doesn't take itself too seriously, but is correctly formatted, whether serendipity or on purpose, just to make really amazing social media clips as well, which is doing all of its promotion for it, which is brilliant. There you go. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully you'll give it a like and share it with somebody, and maybe even subscribe, and I will see you next week.